Welcome to Non-Human Entities YouTube channel. Please subscribe, like, and share if you enjoy this show.
Midnight here at least. Lord willing, we got a good show in store for you tonight. Brother Doug Elwell is going to be joining us here in just a minute. Doug Elwell is known far and wide for his incredible research and theories on what I consider to be some of the most enigmatic subjects in the world today. And I've listened to Doug's interviews. I've just listened to one recently, started on YouTube, where it was on with Gon Shamara from Face Like the Sun YouTube channel. And I just got started on that one, and it already sounds like it's going to be very interesting. But he has opened up my mind to some serious aspects of Bible prophecy that really I've never heard anyone explain before in the way that he did. I've listened to him numerous times talk about PlanetX and the Sphinx and the different possibilities of these two iconic themes now. I've heard him speak about different concepts concerning the tree of life, and on one of our more recent radio interviews as of last year, the code of many callers, interestingly enough. And some things he talks about absolutely just fascinate me, and it's a real privilege to have him on here tonight. His website is mysteriousworld.com. He's the author of The Riddle of the Sphinx, also PlanetX, The Sign of the Son of Man, and The End of the Age. And he's working on a new book right now that sounds very fascinating as well. It's called Giants. He can correct me if I'm wrong on that title. But it's about the giants. And if things go well, he's expecting to have this book done here in the next few months, perhaps, maybe a summer release or perhaps early fall. But it's definitely something that I would like to get my hands on, and I'm sure you would too. So, Doug, if you can hear me, and I believe you can, we got a good connection. How are you doing tonight, my friend? And thank you so much for being with us.
Doing great. Thanks for having me on again.
Yeah, it's a real pleasure, and it's truly going to be an exciting ride. I believe that. But do you mind if we open up? I'd just like to ask you a general question about the current state of our country, and then get your take on the political landscape right now, the upcoming elections, how important they are. I mean, my goodness, it looks like a three-ring circus when you turn on the news sometimes. But just the current state of our country, what are you feeling, Doug? What are you sensing?
I'm sensing there's a great showdown about to happen regarding the direction the country is going. Probably on the one side we'll have Trump, on the other side we'll have Hillary Clinton fighting out for two diametrically or very different ways of seeing things. One government-based, the other private enterprise, individual-based. There'll be a showdown between kingdom versus kingdom, meaning the sense of the way the world will go in the next century. And so it's going to be a hard-fought battle and very bitter. And it might be the outcome of it will be apocalyptic in nature, because it could be, my theory is that Hillary Clinton might be the Whore of Babylon, the representative of that culture, which the Whore of Babylon symbolizes in Revelation 17 and 18. And Trump, it's possible Trump might be the Antichrist, or one of the great people of the end times, perhaps the White Horseman or something like that. So I'm thinking that these characters are two of the great end times characters, which will define the end times, about which much of the information regarding the end times was written, them and their exploits, their rebellion against God, and all the great destruction that they will end up causing.
Wow. I want to get into PlanetX, but I got to follow this question up. I have thought myself about Hillary Clinton being the Whore of Babylon, and I've heard people refer to Donald Trump as possibly an Antichrist candidate. I've heard people, well, I don't know if they've used Antichrist, but they've used some very strong terminology. Doug, let's just take a second here. I really want to get your take on this. Let's start with Hillary Clinton. You say she's possibly could be the Whore of Babylon. I have thought that myself. It's so amazing you're saying that, because it seems like I've even thought that maybe a couple years ago. How could you see, if she gets in office, let's hypothetically, how could you see the progression? What would you suspect would happen, let's say in the first 2 or 3 years, that we would see the persecution, because the Great Babylonian Whore is drunken with the blood of the saints, yet they represent a religious system that rules the world of some kind, and they have an alliance with the beast. So if she would get in, let's just start with her. How do you see things changing as far as our religious freedoms? I don't really like the word religious, but you know where I'm going. Can I get your take on that?
She'll probably continue the Obama administration's tendency to create an atmosphere hostile to Christianity and beneficial to the enemies of Christendom, particularly Islam, which is antithetical to Christianity in the sense it is opposed. Also, other religions that are, simply not Christian, like Buddhism and things of that nature. And that's what Obama's been doing. And I think Hillary would continue more of the same, and also seek to use the courts and the laws and the times in order to create an environment hostile for Christianity, to make it almost impossible for Christians to prosper and live in this country. I don't think she will win, though. I think what will happen is that there will be a contest. There will be a contested election. It will be so close that neither one or the other will accept the victory of the other, and this will lead to possibly a civil war. And this will be the result of the destruction of the left by nuclear weapons, probably. I suspect the description in Ezekiel 38, I think it is, of the war of Gog and Magog. It says that fire will fall on Magog and on the isles who live carelessly. I think that's referring to actually the isles actually is believed to be the Western nations who are mostly most of the people live on the coastlines, particularly England and Europe and specifically America. So what I think is what's going to happen is there's going to be a nuclear war triggered between Russia and the West, and then this will result in the destruction of the major cities, which are the major power bases of the Democrats, and this will result in the destruction of the Democratic Party. And this is what it's meant when it says in Revelation 18, it says, the dragon will hate the whore and eat her flesh and burn her with fire. The dragon represents the radical right, and the whore represents the radical left. And that is a war between the two, which the dragon will win. And then it'll be a great kind of fascist-style dictator takeover of the entire West, and out of the atomic ashes of World War III will rise the great empire of the end with its 7 heads and 10 horns. The 7 heads represent the 7 great G7 economic powers, and the 10 horns represent the 10 nuclear powers. So the end times beast will actually be a confederation of 7 great nations, which are now known as the G7. That's America, France, England, Japan, I think Italy, and then 2 more. Canada, possibly 1 more, I forget the other one. And the 10 nuclear powers are actually 10 nuclear powers right now, possibly Israel. And I think what they're talking about is after this great nuclear war, when there's an actual real nuclear war between us and Russia, we will survive it, and out of that time will come the great end times beast. And those who survive the war will be forced to take the mark or otherwise die, either starvation or sickness or radiation poisoning. So it's probably part of the large plan is to make the environment so hostile to human life that it is impossible to survive without taking the mark.
Wow, absolutely astounding, Doug. What a way to launch this show. What you just said gives us so much material. I don't know how we're going to switch gears as quick as I thought. So you're assuming, not assuming, you're speculating then that these events are imminent. I mean, that in the next year or so, we could be at a civil war.
Yeah, it says, let's see, the horsemen, let's take a look at Revelation 6. And I saw and behold a white horse, and he that sat on him had a bow, and a crown was given unto him, and he went forth conquering and to conquer. But this happens this happens right after the noise of thunder. Now, some have speculated this noise of thunder is actually the description of a nuclear war, possibly, or a nuclear weapon that goes off maybe in New York, triggering the last great end-time war. And the White Horseman is probably the Western power. It's led by a charismatic, powerful, charismatic person like Donald Trump would be a good idea, a good example of that kind of person. He's very charismatic, and he's also warlike. He's made it clear that he will make war on people in his rhetoric. So he's arrogant, boastful, prideful, aggressive, and warlike. And he claims to be a Christian or think like a Christian, yet he's not a Christian. He fits, in many ways, he fits the criteria of the Antichrist. So I've been watching him as a possible Antichrist candidate, a likely one, particularly if there's some sort of a 7-year treaty signed around the end of this year, which is possible. I'm thinking probably the tribulation will start later this year, and will stretch into early 2020s. PlanetX will probably make its near pass in 2020 or 2021. And actually, it might be 2022. I'm trying to figure that would be 2006. There's 6 or 7 years after the election. So I'm thinking, and others are thinking that 2016 might be the beginning. And we'll see, because things have been kind of chaotic, and there's been a lot of tension. But we'll know for sure around the time of the election, because I suspect neither side will accept the other's victory, and the result will be probably a civil war.
So, in the short term, as a Christian who's voting in this election, I mean, you're suggesting that Hillary Clinton could be the great Babylonian whore, Donald Trump could be a candidate for the Antichrist.
Mm-hmm.
What does a Christian do with that? I mean, you almost can't vote for either one of them. I mean, it's just kind of. I mean, that's a sobering thought.
You should vote for the candidate which you think is best. Obviously, Hillary is not the best candidate. We've been voting for the lesser of two evils for a while, so I don't think it's a big deal. We're doing a civic duty voting, and voting for the Antichrist will not make you a bad person. It just means you were fooled into voting for a bad person because he didn't reveal himself to you until after you'd already voted. This is normal. Politicians do this all the time. We might have voted for evil people in the past and not even known it. So we might never know until after we're in glory, and God reveals to us all the things that were happening, all the mysteries, if He chooses. And so, I wouldn't worry about that too much. Remember, we're just living in a temporary situation. We're just passing through this temporary place, this mortal coil, and things we do here, as long as we accept Christ as our Savior, will be forgiven us, and we'll move on to the next level and live the real, true life that our Father intended us to live.
Man, that sounds like a great thing. I think of that a lot, man. I was just talking to the church on Sunday about the last chapter in Revelation, and there's so much mystery in Revelation. I mean, you get into that last chapter and you're reading about, the river and the tree of life, and you work down through about how the curse is lifted, and it's just such a powerful chapter, and it's the last chapter of God's written word, and it leaves you with just this sense of awe of everything that's going to happen. And sometimes, Doug, I just think that we know very little about it all.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're going to see more and more things that are revealed in the end times, and begin to understand what's actually been happening this whole time. And they call it revelation for a reason, because the mysteries are being revealed. All the things that were hidden will become apparent, and all the armies and all the plans that have been set aside will be put in motion, and we'll be experiencing all those things we've been speculating about for thousands of years. Well, the last couple thousand years will start happening, and we'll finally have an understanding what was intended.
Well, what a great way to start the show, and I thank you for being kind enough to share some of your political thoughts right now, and it just makes me, confirms all my suspicions that we are definitely living in some very apocalyptic times, and the end is very, very close. I've felt that, honestly, since around 2010. Something's just been going off inside of me saying, man, this is it. This is the home stretch. And I even thought, and I don't know if we ever talked about this before, I thought about 2020 as well being a very, very significant year just switching gears here, let's talk about the universe. I mean, I know we're going from one extreme to the next right now, but in a lot of ways it's all parallel. Let's talk about the universe. You shared a theory a while back with me that I just thought was absolutely amazing. Doug, why does the universe exist? How and why does the universe exist? Some of the things you have discovered or have the Lord revealed to you, however you want to say it, just an amazing theory you have for that. Would you mind sharing that with us tonight?
Sure. I'm just reading through the prologue of the book on the giants now, and then reviewing what I wrote. I've been writing this off and on for years. This is probably the most important thing I've ever written because it's so kind of basic to the way I think. And that is, before there was a universe, there was God only, and a collection of angels who served him. And all of them were like identical. They were varying orders of power, but they didn't have personalities. They didn't have like individuality. They were just kind of like this spiritual robots who did exactly what they were told to do. And it was like this, they were arranged in this hierarchical pyramid of power, which not a pyramid in the sense of a physical one, but a pyramid of power. And God's energy, the Holy Spirit, passed out of the Father through the Son, and then through this hierarchy of angels, and the angels would pass the power back to the Father in the form of praise. So he would love them, and they would love him back, and there would be a complete circuit of this holy spiritual power, which would be like empowering and controlling this great assembly of angelic beings. And this is the way things were. It was perfect and without error or delay. This was before time and space was created. But I think what the Father wanted is he wanted to create something more. And so he wanted to give these individual beings, or future beings he would create, individual personalities so they could love him willingly rather than just because they were made to do so. And so he created a situation where he had to have, in order to achieve this, he had to have variation. So these beings could be different in some ways from each other. And so what he did is, I think what he did is he set up a plan to introduce imperfection into this otherwise perfect order. And the way he did that is by tempting Satan to fall. Satan and a percentage of these beings, that is 1/3 of them, to fall and rebel against the heavenly order and no longer return that power that God gave them in equal measure. He tempted them, or allowed them to be tempted, it's not clear, to test them to see if they would fall. And they did fall. And so Satan and 1/3 of these beings who lived in this perfect pyramid of light and this mountain of power, mountain of God, however you want to perceive it, they withheld some of the energy they were given and used it to create kind of a universe or imagination of their own. And what resulted was they couldn't handle the energy. And the result was an explosion. Because that energy, they couldn't handle all that power that they were attempting to withhold from the Father, not by not giving back to them, by being selfish and keeping them for themselves. And as a result, there was an explosion, and an explosion led to the creation of the universe, in which variation, time, space, all these things that we see now, the created order, exist. And through that medium, the Father is able to create individual personalities, variation, in a way that gives us individual personalities, but also allows us to make a choice to follow him. And so the entire reason for the creation of the universe was to give his servants personalities, faces. So basically create a gigantic crowd of friends and loved ones that he could share his joy with forever. But those who fell, those who would not be part of this group, who rebelled against the Father and refused to love him back, when he loved them, they did not love him back. That's what they withheld that energy. They will be kept out of this end times period, which is described in Revelation 21 as the New Jerusalem. So basically, the old pyramid was destroyed by the rebellion. The universe was created from its broken shards and the power that was released. Jesus is in the process of creating a new pyramid, actually out of the saints. And he says, they'll say the saints, the New Jerusalem, or they'll say, I'm building a city who's made out of the saints who are like jewels to me. I'll find the particular passage. But basically, the purpose, what Jesus is doing, he's recreating a new great pyramid. And this pyramid is described in Revelation 21 as the New Jerusalem. And this pyramid will not allow in those who rebelled. It says all those who love or like to lie will not be allowed into this pyramid, but only those who love me and obey my commandments will be allowed back in. So he's creating a replacement pyramid, but the fallen angels whose rebellion destroyed the original one will not be let back in. They'll be imprisoned in hell. And so my theory is that the entire process of the universe was to A, get rid of the fallen angels and imprison them and put them in a place where they could no longer rebel, and B, those whom he created to follow him would follow him and be rewarded forever after with the creation of a new heavenly city, a new Jerusalem, wherein they could live forever in glory. And so that everything in between is kind of the stages of this process of removing the fallen angels from heaven and imprisoning them, and then pulling out a remnant out of those he has chosen, those who have chosen to follow him, and getting them out of that situation, away from the other fallen angels, and putting them in this new Jerusalem where they can be kept safe from the predation of the fallen angels forever. And so what we're seeing in the book of Revelation is we're seeing the final stages of this process for removal, where the remainder of the fallen angels are removed from heaven, hurled down the earth, and in the last battle, they make one final attempt to fight off their inevitable doom. They fail and are imprisoned in hell till the final judgment 1,000 years later, where they're imprisoned in hell forever. And after that, the New Jerusalem descends from heaven, and that's for the saints, those who remain loyal to God. They will live in there, and the ones who were not will be imprisoned in hell forever. And so the point of the whole thing was the universe is a process of removing fallen angels from the presence of God and imprisoning them in a place where they could no longer do harm, and rewarding those loyal people, loyal beings he created, with a heavenly place, a replacement city, a replacement pyramid, however you want to see it, that they will live in forever. So that's really the point of the whole creation of the universe in a nutshell.
Now, Doug, you talk about, this is obviously all pre-Adamic, pre-universe time, and I'd never heard anyone talk about this before. As far as us, as individuals, our spirit, our soul, I believe that, we were with God before we came to earth. Have you ever got into any kind of thoughts about that? What's your theories or your speculations on, God obviously said Jeremiah, he knew him before he was born. Do you think that we were with the Lord, or at what point in eternity past did he create us? I know that's a deep question. I just wondered if you've ever thought about that.
I don't know. It's since we were created and born, our spirits may have been born into bodies, and then we live a life and then move on to our reward after it. It might be that we're created spirits that are created to replace the fallen angels who fell, so we will take their place in this new Jerusalem. And this is why they hate us so much, because we are their replacements whom they are training. So it's possible.
Yeah, it's interesting stuff. So that's part of the book, The Giants. What you just shared with us is an excerpt from that book.
This is a prologue, part of the prologue, where I talk about the fall of Satan and the creation of the universe and his war with God, where he is trying to create create an entire army of giants in order to supplement his forces in the war against God, because he's outnumbered 2-1 and needs more reinforcements. And so this is the background for the point of the creation of the giants, is this heavenly war, which has been ongoing for who knows how long, before time even began, apparently. And if this is what my theory is true. And so the giants have been and will come back again as part of the war against God. And Satan's attempt to reacquire the throne of God away from Jesus, taking heaven by force, as the Bible says. Violent men try to take hold of the kingdom by force, and so there's basically two ways of trying to attain heaven: one by the free gift of God through Jesus, or two, literally taking it by force through force of arms. And so there's been the two different ways of doing things, of attempting to go to heaven, is by either accepting forgiveness and salvation, or not accepting forgiveness and salvation, and literally making war on God. And that's why the giants were created, is to help the fallen angels achieve that goal.
In Revelation 19:19, I just have it pulled up here on the computer, reading out of the New Living. It says, "Then I saw the beast and the kings of the world and their armies gathered together to fight against the one sitting on the horse and his army," talking about Jesus and his army. So, Doug, I mean, Scripture is obvious here that the world, at the very end, at that final battle, at this battle anyway, that happens here in the Valley of Megiddo, a lot of people, I would call this the Battle of Armageddon, the Antichrist successfully unites, I'm going to guess, millions of people, and they know that they're going out to fight Jesus. I mean, this says that they go out to fight the rider on the horse. Can you just kind of expound on this scripture? How does this all transpire? How do you think this is all going to reach this point? Does the Antichrist deceive people, or does he tell them we can overthrow God, God's coming back, and we can beat him? But this verse is definitely telling us they go out to fight against the Lord.
Yes, that's the whole point. Is the end times is the marshaling of the forces of the Antichrist and the conquest of the world to prepare for this, to fight against the second coming of Christ. That's the whole point of it. The first 3.5 years of the tribulation is the political consolidation of the earth through a series of wars. And the second 3.5 is the preparation for the war against God himself through his Son for control of the heavenly throne. The heavenly throne being possibly PlanetX. It's one of my theories.
So this battle that we're reading about in Revelation 19:19, I mean, if you can just maybe just walk me through it. Okay, the tribulation begins, and of course, the traditional views it's a 7-year tribulation period, and the Antichrist through that first 3.5 years begins to rise to power completely. I guess it's around the midway point. You have the abomination of desolation, but then at some point, does the Antichrist tell the world, okay, listen, Jesus is coming back, and the Bible is true, but if you listen to me, we can beat him, we can overthrow him, we can rule the world? Like, is it that laid out for the world?
I don't know exactly what he's going to say, but I don't think people would follow unless they had no choice. Probably they think that, and it says they are also rebels, and possessed by the spirits of demons, who are also fallen angels, those who rebelled since the beginning, who are motivating and empowering these people to fight against the second coming by giving them not only knowledge but also high technology in order to do so. So I think that the Father is allowing Satan and his followers enough technology and knowledge and power to give a credible fight, to give his Son a credible fight, because otherwise there's no glory in defeating a weakened enemy. I do think that the Antichrist will be purposely empowered for the purpose of making the Son fight an enemy worth fighting, and so thereby giving him the glory of the great victory over the forces of the beast and of Satan, and making it clear to all the survivors that Jesus is the King of both heaven and earth, and it is his rule which will rule for 1,000 years, not that of the Antichrist or any other of the fools that fell.
So when they go out to the Valley of Megiddo, are they going to have technology that they're tracking the return of Christ, or like how is that going to work? Or is he going to? Do you suspect he will just say, "Hey, I know that Jesus is showing up here at a certain time," and they're all just going to march out and wait, or is it going to be on like a radar or some kind of a technologically system that we don't have now, technologically advanced system that we don't have now, because they go out to fight him at a certain place? This just fascinates me. I'm sorry if I'm trying to exhaust it, but it just really fascinates me that the world goes out with the Antichrist for the purpose to fight against the rider on the horse. So they're either deceived and they think the rider on the horse is bad and the Antichrist is good, or something happens, but we've already kind of talked about that. But even further than that, is the Antichrist going to be using new technology to track and be able to tell with certainty when that rider on the horse is going to appear? Or how do you think that that's all, plays a part in there?
Well, the horse is probably referring to either PlanetX or possibly some sort of craft. It's probably not a literal horse. In the end times, you're talking about a battle not only between Jesus and Satan, but also between PlanetX and Earth. This is a rejoinder of the ancient creation battle that happened at the beginning of Earth's history, where Earth was divided into two pieces. One set as the asteroid belt, and the other larger part set as the Earth in its current orbital path, which is closer to the sun. This battle between these two planets will be rejoined in the end times, just as it says in Isaiah. I will battle against Leviathan in the end times. He's talking about an end times battle with Leviathan, not in the beginning. Leviathan is associated not only with the beginning, but also the end times. I believe it's Isaiah 27:1. I will fight against the great dragon that lives in the sea. He's talking about the end time battle. And this is the dragon rising up from the deep again. Leviathan associated with the dragon Tiamat, the creation epic in English, the Babylonian creation epic. And in the Babylonian creation epic, which was a very, very well-known and highly influential story of the ancient world, the dragon Tiamat was defeated by being another star in the sky, known by various different names based on what culture you're in. The original, of course, was basically it was supposed to be a symbolic battle between Earth and another planet on our solar system, which I believe to be currently known as PlanetX or Planet 9, some call it, which people are searching for at this time. So when you see the horse and rider, we're actually talking about a huge planet coming towards Earth. Daniel refers to it as the Ancient of Days with its long flowing hair. He's not actually referring to God with the hair. He's actually referring to PlanetX. The long flowing hair is actually this huge comet tail, which in Greek the word kometes literally means long hair, so a long white hair actually. So what he's talking about is this is the return of PlanetX and the fight against the army that's coming from PlanetX to fight against the army that's waiting for them on Earth. And they deduced somehow that being in the Valley of Megiddo is the most effective way of countering that army. But actually the Lord set it up so that they will be most effectively destroyed by going there, because that is probably where the heavenly sword, which will come between the two planets, will land and just literally disintegrate the entire army, possibly in a matter of minutes or even seconds. So this is why we're saying that it says that there was a huge river of blood, because these guys will all be killed in a matter of minutes. There'll be gigantic amounts of flesh and blood, incredible amounts of gore suddenly introduced into this area. There'll be a massive flood of just awfulness pouring through as the entire army is destroyed almost instantaneously by a bolt of energy passing between PlanetX and Earth. I think that's part of the reason they're gathered in a particular place. It is so they can be most efficiently destroyed.
So they're out there watching for this planet. Like they've been tracking this planet, and they go out there, and they know at this point, the Antichrist knows, according to what you're saying, that Jesus is with this planet, and he goes out to fight him. And so it sounds to me that this planet's just not going to one day pop up out of nowhere. I mean, at a certain point, they're going to start tracking this thing, and we're going to know exactly where it's at in the sky, correct?
Yeah, they probably know where it's at now. They're just not talking about it. I think it's actually first sighted from the Earth, or at least announced by the powers of the Earth during the period described in Revelation 6, 15 through 17. And it says, "Well, the kings of the earth and the great men and the mighty men hid themselves in the dens and the rocks of the mountains, saying, to then fall on us and hide us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. This happens right after 6:13, where it says, the stars of heaven fell into earth, even as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs when she is shaken of a mighty wind. And the heaven departed as a scroll when it was rolled together, and every mountain and island were moved out of their places. This is PlanetX starting to become visible to the naked eye. And there's the amount of asteroids and comets that it has in its orbital path are now beginning to intersect with Earth's orbit in a significant way. And this is when you have massive asteroidal bombardment, which is so intense that it's actually causing the Earth's crust to slip away from the mantle to the point where it's actually disjointed, and the crust is temporarily no longer turning with the rest of the Earth. So you have a situation where literally every island and mountain is moved out of its place because the entire crust is being displaced. And in fact, all the clocks and all the times will be changed by this, because Earth will probably lose a couple of hours because of the crustal displacement, maybe a couple of days. In fact, we have sometimes crustal displacement caused by even large earthquakes, which can actually cause us to lose fractions of seconds off of our clock. And sometimes they have to be adjusted when large earthquakes occur on Earth. So when this happens, when the entire crust is displaced, all the clocks on Earth will be off by hours or days. And of course, every single mountain and island on Earth will literally be moved as the entire crust moves. And that's really the only way for that to happen, because there's no other way all the islands and the mountains can move without all life on Earth being destroyed right then and there.
And the Bible's clear that they all will move. I mean, you're talking about a cataclysmic, absolutely world-changing event. Now, when you read that in the sixth seal, now Revelation, my understanding of it, and I know everyone has their own different interpretations, it's not exactly chronological, correct?
There are some parenthetical passages which kind of harken back to some previous events, like the dragon in Revelation 12 probably refers to the downfall of the dragon, and possibly at the beginning of the universe, which led to the creation of the universe. And I talk about this, I allude to this in my prologue, where the dragon being thrown down is actually part of the process of the universe. Its early creation as a dragon is the introduction of imperfection into the universe and evil in general. And I actually have another powerful demon along with him, and there are other demons. And I talk about the hierarchy of angels and demons, and the number of angels there are, and the number of demons, and why that is, and so forth. So I've actually figured out a lot of stuff on my own.
Yeah, I mean, it's just amazing. I mean, some of the things you talk about, I mean, I could just park with so many subjects, but I want to cover some ground here. But this is just a tremendous amount of information. You're so knowledgeable about these subjects. And again, thank you very much for being with us. It's 11:40 here on the East Coast. Like I said, we're riding at least till midnight, and we're on with Doug Elwell, and his website is mysteriousworld.com, and he is an author. He's a very well-known internet radio personality as well. And it's a privilege to be talking to you tonight, Doug. You're sharing so much insight with us, and it gives me so much to think about. I'm still stirred up about the beginning of this radio broadcast where you talked about Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump and what you foresee happening over the next year or so here in our country. I mean, wow, that was so so startling to me, and I want to listen to it again myself when we get off the phone. But just as we're talking now about PlanetX, and we've already kind of opened it up here. We've touched a little bit about the universe, why does it exist, and you've given us the prologue of your book, Giants, which it sounds absolutely amazing. I can't wait till it's done. Is it going to be actually like a book, like a printed book, or is it going to be e-book, or how's that look right now?
It'll be a printed book. It'll be published by Defender Press and available on these Skywatch TV online store.
Wow, Tom Horn, are you going to be on Skywatch TV soon?
When we get the book published, we'll be promoting it, and you'll be able to see me in the flesh, or at least on TV.
Oh, that'll be so cool. You know, I don't know I've ever seen you. I don't know I've ever seen a picture of you yet. I don't think there's one on Mysterious World, at least not one that I've seen. So maybe the first time I actually get to see you will be on Skywatch TV, and that's going to be really awesome. I'll be like, hey man, there's Doug. He's on with Tom Horn or the host on there now. But I watched their YouTube channel, and what a great ministry they have. I mean, Tom Horn has brought some things to the body of Christ that if he wouldn't have spoke about them, I don't know who would have spoke about them. And Doug, I think the same way with you. My opinion isn't going to get you a cup of coffee, but you know, some of the things you talk about I've never heard before. But enough of me talking. I want to hear you talk. So, PlanetX. Let's just stay with PlanetX. You know, it made a comeback in the news again this year. For the last how many years? It seems like right around December, January, February, this thing hits the news again. Where do you think PlanetX is at right now? And obviously, based off your earlier points about where we're at in the prophetic timeline, this thing's going to have to be seen by the naked eye pretty soon, isn't it?
If it's going to be anywhere near here in the next 10 years, visible to the naked eye, passing anywhere near Earth, it's probably going to have to be approaching the orbit of Jupiter by now, pretty soon, the next couple of years. It's not a fast mover because it has a 2,000-year orbit according to my calculations, and it'll probably take about 5 to 10 years to get from past the orbit of Jupiter, thereabouts, all the way in close enough to the Earth to cause cataclysms. And in fact, it's possible that the 7 bowl judgments are actually referencing the 7 satellites of PlanetX passing close enough to Earth to cause cataclysms, not actually striking in it, but coming so close that there's massive gravitational and electromagnetic disruptions so tremendous that whatever was left from the seals and trumpets will be wiped out by the bowls. So we're talking about it. When Jesus says, as lightning will stretch from the east and go to the west, so coming to the son of man be in Matthew 24. He's talking about PlanetX's tail and its wing-like, comet-like tail, which actually goes out to either side and the bottom, will actually cover the entire sky or most of it. In fact, I would say upwards of 50% or more of the entire sky will be covered by PlanetX at its close passing. And it'll be so bright that the light from the sun will be reflected back on the dark side of the earth 7 times. So that's what it says in Revelation, where it says, the great heat there'll be such great heat that the men will gnaw their tongues in pain. That's because there's no nighttime for the earth to cool off, and the night side of the earth is actually part of the day side. And things will get hotter and hotter and hotter as PlanetX approaches more closely. And then the earth will reel to and forth like a booth, because its rotation will be affected by the gravitational pull of the PlanetX and satellites and so forth. So this is all the answers to the weird questions found in many parts of the old prophecies, major and minor prophets, talking about how the earth will be 7 times brighter, how it says in Revelation how there'll be a tremendous heat, how the earth will reel to and fro like a booth in its orbital path. It's because there's a massive planet coming right near it, reflecting back huge amounts of sunlight, which makes perfect sense. That would be exactly what would happen if a planet like that passed nearby. And so the prophets were mainly seeing the return to PlanetX and describing the effects it has on Earth in the end times, not to destroy it, but to cause so much devastation that if the Lord did not intervene, no life on Earth would have been spared. Everything would have been destroyed.
So when you look at Revelation and the 6th seal, and you were talking about how, you know, the rich man, the free man, the bondman, they all begin to talk about, you know, the great day of his wrath is coming, who's able to stand. How much literal time, like when you read that in Revelation, and then say you get to, like the 2 witnesses in Revelation, and you get down in, how much literal time do you think elapses on earth from the 6th seal to say, down into the Battle of Armageddon?
6th seal to Battle of Armageddon would probably be the last 3.5 years. I suspect the first 6 seals are the first 3.5 years. The 5th seal is basically the Antichrist taking the throne, and ordering the Order 66, the Christians executed. In this case, Order 666, having the Christians executed who did not take his mark. I'm actually not a pre-tribulation person, so this is those who have survived the first 3.5 years of the tribulation are still living in society and are still part of the system. These people will all be rounded up and murdered, like the Jews were in Auschwitz and so forth, maybe even in a more horrible way. Nailed up to flaming crosses, tortured horribly, that sort of thing. And so at that time, people will be so desperate, and there will be no more law and order, there will be no more mercy. It's just fight or die. And so this will be a very, very horrible time. And those Christians who are not prepared for that time, who have not laid up their 7 years of food for the famine of 7 years, which was clearly prefigured by Joseph in Egypt, will be out of luck and will probably die. So I do not believe there will be a pre-tribulational rapture. I do think we will go through the tribulation, and those who are not prepared for it, or not deeply dug down into the earth with 7 years of food and water and entertainment so they don't go crazy, and companionship with people they trust, most likely family, because blood is thicker than water. Those are the people who will survive to the end. Everyone else, and I mean 90, 95, maybe 99% of all Christians are going to die through this process. Sorry to have to say that, but that's just what the Bible says. Very few people make it to the tribulation. And if the Christians are being actively hunted, very few of them indeed will survive. The Bible says, I'll make man like the golden wedge of oak here. Very, very precious. I'm thinking 95% of all humanity by the end of the tribulation is dead. So that's leaving, if we have 6 billion now, that has, maybe 600 million. That's probably about the number they're looking to find at the Georgia Guidestones. I think they're looking to reduce mankind's population to 500 million or something. Are you familiar with the Georgia Guidestones? Have you heard of the Georgia Guidestones before?
Very, very familiar.
They're saying this says on the Georgia Guidestones that they want to reduce the population of the Earth, not the United States or Europe, to Earth, down to 500 million maximum. And if we were to do that now, we'd have to literally kill over 90% of everyone living. So I think that's what they're actually the outworking of the actual goal of the Freemasons and other secret societies, who are the intermediaries between the fallen angels and Earth. That's always been their role. Is that the commandment of the fallen angels was they wanted to have humanity literally reduced to a certain percentage so they can be more easily controlled by a central computer, which is what the chip is all about. And so, yeah, it's actually, to get 500,000, it's a much smaller number than that number.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely been put out there, and one of the things you just brought up about like the secret societies and stuff, they hide everything in plain sight. They're not really. You watch the entertainment industry, you watch the music world, all the things that you see from cartoons clear down to mainstream media, they hide everything in plain sight.
Yeah, so there's been more and more stuff. We're seeing, for example, and this is kind of interesting because I was reading Revelation 19, and it talks about and these spirits, like this says, there's these spirits like frogs that proceed out of the mouth of the Antichrist, the beast, and the false prophet, or something like that. I recently saw this piece where people believe now that the character Jar Jar Binks in the original, the newer series of Star Wars, was actually a Sith Lord, secretly, and he was actually running the whole show by using like Jedi mind tricks and causing people to do whatever he wanted. And through the analysis, they actually made a very convincing argument he was actually the secret Jedi or secret Sith Lord behind the entire thing. And I thought that was interesting because Jar Jar was actually a large talking frog, basically. And I wonder if Lucas was inspired in trying to warn us about these power behind the scenes, these kind of sinister beings posing as nice, likable, jolly people, were actually kind of writing the show. And it says that in Revelation, I think it's Revelation 19 or 20, where these frog-like spirits go out to basically rally the nations to fight against God. I wonder if that wasn't being alluded to in the Star Wars show, epics and so forth. The Death Star obviously being the representative of PlanetX and so forth, and the rebellion being the fallen angels fighting against the return of the Death Star. That one's fairly obvious to me as well. So I think a lot of this stuff has been hidden in plain sight this entire time. The entire Star Wars epics were all about preparing Earth for the second coming of Christ, or and specifically PlanetX returning, which was portrayed as an evil Death Star that has to be fought against and destroyed. So we've been prepared. They've been marshaling Earth's forces to fight against the second coming, not just for the last 7 years, but maybe for the last 70 years, or maybe even hundreds or even thousands of years of careful manipulation of the human genome and human society and technology towards the goal of allowing mankind to be used in their end times war against God.
And isn't it amazing that Star Wars, it never goes away? And one could say it's bigger now than it ever was. I mean, that franchise is just beyond belief, and here it is again. And now you can see the agenda's really starting to play. And I just read that they're going to have their first gay Star Wars character in the next movie, that they're going to, really going to go out there and do that. I'm just thinking, now that all these young, impressionable minds are hooked on Star Wars, now they're going to start really trying to, pump the propaganda in there. And it's just like the devil to do that kind of stuff,
Well, they've been systematically propagandizing us. So they're creating an environment that's conducive to be inhabited and controlled by fallen angels who are kind of these unisex, anything goes characters. So they're trying to create an environment where homosexuality is normative. And it even says in the Bible, I think this is what they actually intended. Jesus was talking in the Gospels. There'll be two men in one bed, one will be taken, another won't. There'll be two women grinding in the field, one woman will be taken, the other won't. I think he was actually politely alluding to homosexuality and lesbianism being commonplace in the end time, so commonplace that even the chosen were engaging in that kind of activity. That's how corrupt the end time is. But in His great mercy, He will save them from their own corruption. And He will. But it's interesting that one will be taken, the other left. These people were chosen, and they've accepted Christ earlier in their lives and backslid to such a point that they were doing extremely wicked things. But I do think that's what it'll be. It'll be so bad in the end times that homosexuality will not only be accepted, it'll be normative or possibly even enforced. And in the end,
if you look at, I'm sorry.
No, that's my point. It'll be.
I was going to say
basically, the fallen angels are basically in the process of enforcing homosexuality as the norm rather than the exception.
Well, yeah. I think is it Revelation 11? It talks about the two witnesses. I think it is, and I'm going to pull it up real quick. Yeah, it is. But if you read Revelation chapter 11, just talking about how you say homosexuality is going to be so prevalent, it actually says, and I'll read the scripture here. I'm just going to scroll down through and find it. It actually says in Revelation 11.
Verse 8.
Is it verse 8? That's the two witnesses. I'm just looking for the verse that talks about how that Jerusalem is called Sodom. I mean,
it's verse 8.
It's verse 8. Okay, verse 8. You got that, verse 8.
Their dead bodies shall lie in the street of the great city,
go ahead, yeah.
Which spiritually is called Sodom and Egypt, where also our Lord is crucified. We have gay-themed stuff going on all the time in Jerusalem and have been for a while now. And it will become normative in the end and almost enforced. Who knows, maybe soldiers will be required to sleep with each other as part of their sensitivity training or something like that. It's something that wicked could be happening. We're talking about the absolute bottomless pit of human behavior right there at the end, and that is probably what will be enforced by the armies of the fallen angels.
Yeah, and the abomination of desolation, I've often thought, when you look at the word abomination, just, your casual understanding of Scripture, even people that don't really study the word a lot, they know that an abomination, if you say that word in context of the biblical narrative, that it means a lot of people liken that to homosexuality. So could the abomination of desolation somehow be tied into homosexuality? You know, I've wondered about that, because when you think about abomination, you think about homosexuality. And could there be some kind of a gay union or something? Because let's face it, homosexuality is one of the most divisive and polarizing subjects of our day. It is the defining cultural issue right now. I mean, it doesn't seem like it's going away, Doug.
Yeah, like I said, it's going to become more and more prominent until it's normative or even enforced. I do think the abomination of desolation is actually talking about something else, and that is actually talking about the Sohar stone I was mentioning earlier. I think what will happen is this ancient stone will actually be set on a pole on top of the temple, and it'll be used to literally destroy anyone on earth who opposes the Antichrist in his reign. The Sohar stone is basically like the ultimate weapon. It can generate lasers of enormous power. And my theory is that it can actually be used to reflect using a series of satellites, lasers anywhere on the Earth's face in less seconds, to destroy anyone almost instantaneously who isn't underground. And that's why it says when you see the abomination of desolation spoken by Daniel, do not go back to your coat, flee and run and hide in the mountains or under the mountains, because this thing is about to be turned on. And if you're a Christian or just an enemy of the Antichrist, you're about to be fried instantaneously. I talk about it in my book, The Riddle of the Sphinx, what this thing is, how it operates. Basically a supercomputer which uses lasers to read and write to a crystal made of sapphire, which could also be used as a weapon, these lasers which even a CD-ROM will use to read write to a CD and optical drives. This will be able to use not only to write to the interior of this crystal, which is a technology that exists now, but it'll actually be able to use these lasers to destroy things. And as this ancient supercomputer, which will be found underneath the Sphinx, which once belonged to Satan, it was one of the sources of his power and knowledge, will be rediscovered by the Antichrist and used as a means of conquering the earth. That is what the abomination of desolation is. Desolation literally means to destroy utterly. It's not like homosexuality. It's a weapon that's like a disintegration ray, like a phaser in Star Trek. It hits you, you disappear in a puff of smoke. You're totally destroyed. That's what desolation means. It doesn't mean abomination in the sense of sexual. It means abomination is that this thing does not belong here. It's a weapon of war. It's absolutely an evil object when it's used improperly. And the Antichrist will use it improperly to destroy all of his enemies, everyone in the world who oppose his rule. And that's what it says. He'll make fire come down from heaven within the sight of men. You see this network of satellites which reflect the laser anywhere on Earth in less than a second. In fact, the laser can travel around the Earth in a fraction of a second. If you decide you're dead and you're on the surface of the Earth, you're dead. There's no way you can avoid it. That thing will fry you just like that. In the twinkling of an eye, you're ashes.
Wow, man, that's an awesome theory too, and like I said, I'm going to have to listen to this radio show again. I've often thought about the abomination of desolation. Well, from time to time, I think about it occasionally, and so many different theories out there about it. And what you just said, man, is very, very fascinating. Doug, you know, it's 12 o'clock, so midnight here on the East Coast, so we're not going to probably go a whole lot longer than we've went, but I already want to invite you back for another show sometime. Maybe we can just shoot a couple emails and get some things figured out. But I do want to ask you this just before we go. You know, obviously you're looking at a window of 4 to 6, 7 years where you're anticipating most of everything we're talking about transpiring. So what do you do now? I mean, you just occupy till he comes, I'm assuming, but I'd say you have a level of preparation as well. I'm not asking you to give me any kind of secrets or I'm not trying to pry, but just to give people advice. I believe there'll be a pre-wrath rapture. That's my personal belief, but I don't put the wrath of God where a lot of people put it. I put the wrath of God around the sixth seal because that's where the first in Revelation, the first time you see the word wrath, and I believe the rapture will happen somewhere around the sixth seal and the breaking of the seventh seal. That's just kind of my personal belief. But even in saying that, I believe that Christians should have a level of preparation, because I think we're going to go through those first six seal judgments at least. That's just my opinion. I mean, I could be wrong. So preparation, Doug, how important is it? And if you wait to a certain line, you won't have time to prepare.
Well, I would start looking into storable food now. Scottish TV store, I think, has links to storable food, or you can buy it online. There's also it's a prominent televangelist has become popular again. I forget his name offhand.
Jim Baker.
Yeah, Jim Baker. Jim Baker has a 7-year food supply thing he sells on his site. You could look into that. I don't know about the quality, but I intend to buy 7 years of food, probably sooner rather than later, and store it. It would take a large amount of space. I think it's like a 15 by 15 cube, or a 12 by 12 cube, ironically. Interestingly, I calculated 6 million divided by, if you want to reduce 6 billion down to 500,000 or 500 million, that's exactly 12. So I think it's interesting. That's a biblical number. So 11/12 of the U.S. population probably would be destroyed as a result of the end times. But I would suggest just going ahead and assuming that you pre-trib rapture is not going to happen. And if you get raptured, you're not going to need the money or the food anyway, so don't worry about it. Leave it behind for other people who will need it. But I suggest you buy 7 years of food and prepare for the worst. Get into a deep underground bunker, not get it nice and prepared. You might want to just, if there's a 7-year treaty going to be signed near the end of this year, or right around the Trump presidency, I'll go ahead and assume that's the end times beginning, and start taking in, if you haven't bought food yet, to it then. Buy some land with some underground, place where you can go underground and hide. Be prepared to have to hide for many, many years with minimal or no contact with anyone else, or access to TV and internet, stuff like that. In fact, you probably won't want internet because that'd be a dead giveaway to your position. Cell phones and things like that, you might have to give up. Anything that would give away your position gives off broadcast signal, you'll probably have to give up. But the flip side is you'll be alive, so it'll be a good payoff. And if you're lucky, you'll make it long enough to see the second coming of Christ with your own eyes. Otherwise, you'll perish with the rest, which, if you're a Christian, you'll be going with the Father anyway. Return to the Father and be with Him forever. So the worst that can happen is blissful paradise with the Father forever, so that's not so bad.
No, and as always, Brother Doug, it's been great talking to you, and I always appreciate hearing you explain your beliefs and even the things that's speculative in nature about the pre-Adamic world and all the things we talk about. Actually, so much of it's speculative, and I'd like to try to do this again soon. I'm going to try to get this up on our YouTube channel within the next 48 hours. Can't wait to share it with people and read the comments. Obviously, we don't agree on everything. I don't know of anybody that I agree with everything about, but that's the beauty of these kind of conversations, man. And I hear so many things you're saying that I don't, even if I don't agree, I don't want to discard. I want to look into them. I want to explore them. I want to read, and I want to research. And I appreciate you, man, and I do. And everything you're talking about with Abomination of Desolation, the Zohar Stone, that stuff's so far over my head that I've heard you talk about it, but I've never just dove into it to really look at it myself. So when I hear those things, disagree is probably a strong term. Just not even being acquainted with the subject and the material, I can't make nearly as an educated assumption as you can about that stuff. But man, you give me a lot to think about. I'm sure you give our listeners a lot to think about, and you're just such a good brother in the Lord, and I appreciate you taking the time to be with us tonight. So thank you very much.
Could I mention the book real quick?
Oh, absolutely. I'd like to hear all about it.
The book about the Zohar, which will be the Abomination of Desolation, is written in my book, The Riddle of the Sphinx, which is available on Amazon as a Kindle ebook. It's called The Riddle of the Sphinx by Doug Elwell. And also, the book is PlanetX, The Sign of the Son of Man and the End of the Age, which is available on Skywatch TV store. That's skywatchtv.com at the store. You can also get it on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and so forth. You can go to my website at mysteriousworld.com, read about my original articles in the Giants, get an idea what I'll be talking about in the final book. And you can also contact me directly at publisher@mysteriousworld.com.
Yes, and I apologize for not giving you that. I know we mentioned your website a couple times in the books, but not giving you that actual opportunity there to share that. I'm so glad you did that, and I'll make sure when I put this on YouTube that I have a little description in the box that goes over some of this information as well, so people can get your material. Fascinating material, and one of my favorite people to talk to on the air, Doug Elwell. Once again, it's been an honor. I look forward to having you back, and thank you so much for joining us tonight.
All right, thanks very much, Steve.
Have a great evening.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Well, that was Doug Elwell, ladies and gentlemen, and